If I catch you doing something consistent with this change, I'm going to celebrate you.
If you get the people right, you're going to have a leg up on everything else.
Be clear about it. That clarity is kindness to every one of your employees.
Hi, I'm Leslie Grandy, and welcome to my podcast, What If? As a former film production executive and senior exec at some of the biggest companies in the world, like Apple, Amazon, and T-Mobile, I have learned many lessons that have helped shape me in my career. I have found that the single greatest tool for problem solving is to ask, what if? As it makes you consider every angle to guarantee that the solution you produce is the best one because it has been carefully thought out, ensuring it effectively delivers the outcome you envision. This simple question is what makes huge companies successful, and it's also a catalyst for executives, leaders, and managers to solve the variety of competitive, customer, and organizational challenges they regularly face. Each week, I will provide tools and tips I have learned along my journey to help you build the skills and confidence to take on difficult problems. Welcome to What If with Leslie Grandy.
Welcome to this compilation episode of What If with Leslie Grandy. Every leader I've ever met says the same thing. People are our greatest asset, and I believe they mean it. But meaning it and acting in ways that reflect it are two very different things. The difference between the two is whether culture is built or broken. It's where change either takes root or quietly dies. This episode is a compilation of some of the most honest conversations I've had about what leadership actually requires. Not the textbook version, the real version, with its contradictions, its vulnerability, and the hard question none of us can avoid forever. How do you want to be remembered? You'll hear from 6 leaders who have each wrestled with a different piece of that question. I think together they tell one hell of a story. Let's get into it. Dr. Cynthia makes a distinction I think about a lot. Human capital isn't passive. It has agency. That's what separates people from every other line item on the balance sheet. But here's a harder question. If you actually believe that, what does it change about how you lead day to day? Because most organizations say they believe it, and most leaders say they believe it. But then budget gets tight, or change initiative rolls out, or a reorg happens, and the gap between what we say and what we do becomes very visible very fast.
CEOs and leaders are frequently saying people are our greatest assets. And I believe that they believe that. The reality is, though, that there's this fundamental difference in how we think about financial capital and human capital. We invest in bricks and mortar, we invest in technology, we invest in those kinds of things, but still, when budgets are tight, people are often the first place that we cut, and then we have to hurry up and hire. I think that there's too few leaders and organizations that are looking at how to quantify the return on that investment, recognizing it is truly a compounding investment.
And so one of the thoughts I had is that it might feel to some that there's a danger in framing employees as a value or an asset because it shifts organizations' thinking towards a more transactional relationship than a human relationship. And so how do leaders avoid reducing people to just that kind of line item on the balance sheet that you described? I mean, they represent it, and there's value in recognizing how large that line is, but it could subtly shift someone's perspective on what that is and the people behind that number.
Yeah, Leslie, I am so glad you asked that question. And here's why. When I initially named the book, I wanted to just call it what it is. I used a financial framework to help executives who think in the language of business to appreciate the compounding asset that people's human capital is. Here's the big differentiator. You have human capital. I have human capital. Every person listening has human capital. We have agency over our human capital. So we're not a widget, right? We're not a commodity that doesn't have agency. Yes, there's human capital, and I define that as will, ability, skills, knowledge, and natural talent. Leaders have to model the change. So if I'm expecting you to behave differently, do something differently, act differently, process something differently, as a leader, I have to be modeling that so that now people see that, okay, that's the change. You've talked about it, but I also see it happening, right? Where change breaks down the most and has the biggest opportunity to be a win or a fail is in reinforcement. If I catch you doing something right, that's consistent with this change, like coming to me and saying, hey, Cynthia, I've been going through my job and looking back at my past week, and I've identified at least 3 things that I think we can automate. Now, if the change is let's automate as much as we can so that humans can do higher level thinking and higher level work, I'm going to celebrate you. I want to, in whatever way you like to be motivated, I want to celebrate Leslie and say, that is amazing. I don't want to penalize you. I don't want to go, oh, now your job's in jeopardy because you just found 3 things we can automate. I want to celebrate that. I want to double down on that. At the same time, if I find somebody's over here resistant to the change and going back to the old way of doing things, that needs to be addressed. We need to be pulling that person aside and saying, hey, Tommy, I see that you're still doing it this way. Remember that this is the new way we're doing it, and get that person on path.
Kelly Wright has spent her career watching what happens when leaders do that well and when they don't. Kelly's framing, get the people right and a lot else will follow, sounds simple. And I think it is simple in the way that most true things are simple. The hard part is the execution, because leading people well isn't just about culture decks and town halls. It shows up in the small moments and how you respond when someone brings you a problem, and whether you make it safe to say, I don't know, or I tried this and it didn't work, and whether people on your team feel like they're growing or just getting through the week. Her take on why change so often stalls and what it actually takes to make it stick is one of the most practical things I've heard on this topic.
It's people who start companies. It's people who build companies. It's people that hire other people. It's people who manage those people. There's people who are engaging with your customers. There's people who are providing your customer service. It's people who are making decisions. I mean, even when you're in this world now where you're having AI, there's still people involved in making decisions about where you're going to go, what the company's going to do, what product you're going to buy. And so I think what ends up happening is oftentimes people are thinking about leadership of how do you get operational efficiency? How do you do operational effectiveness? How are you launching all these different processes? How are you getting speed, productivity? All of that is clearly essential. But for me, it's really of if you get the people right, you're going to have a leg up on everything else. And so for me, it's all about the people always. And that brings back to a lot of what we can talk about culture with mission, vision, values, or how you build high performance teams, all of that, because you want people to be connected to the mission and purpose of the company. You want people to feel like they can have a positive impact. You want people to feel inspired and motivated to be their best self, do their best work, and bring their authentic self to work. And all of that is really where I've put my highest priorities through all of my roles and really focused on that for the people that have been on my teams, whether in management or individual contributor roles, because you get the people side right, a lot else will follow. You can have the best company with the right time and the right place, and you get the people wrong, it's not going to go well.
Mark Kamlis learned a lesson early in his career from a mentor who gave him advice that annoyed him at first, but it fundamentally changed how he thinks about his role as a leader, and I think you'll recognize yourself in it.
Somehow we believe this lie that we go to work and we cut out the personal parts of ourselves that really matter. There was very strong evidence to suggest that that's a bad idea. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that the way forward is to bring your wholehearted full self into the workplace. And I think in order to do that, the owners need to do that before they invite their staff to do it. That's to say, if you want to go skinny dipping with a bunch of friends, the best way to do it is to take off your clothes and jump in and say, come on in, the water's fine. But if you stand on the dock with a bunch of people and tell them to get naked and jump in, that's creepy. That's a little weird, right? So like you have to lead with that vulnerability. You have to lead with the thing that says, hey, I own this little shop and this is who I am. And this is who I'm becoming. And this is what I'm trying to do with my little store. And God, I hope you'll join me in that mission. Will you join me in that? Like, this is what we're doing here. And I don't care if it's a restaurant or a little dry cleaner store or the little shop around the corner. I think just to be honest about it, be clear about it. That clarity is kindness to every one of your employees. Hey, this is who I am. This is who I'm hoping to become. These are all the things I've not yet achieved. Here's all the ways I've failed. But tomorrow I'm going to wake up with this big desire on my heart and I'm going to pursue it fully. That's leadership. And there's so much freedom to do that. And for some reason, we believe a sneaky little lie that says that we can't show up that way. And I think Canlis is a hypothesis, an experiment saying, is that true?
I hope you enjoyed this episode of What If with Leslie Grandy. If you'd like to learn more about how we can work together to expand your organization's capacity to innovate, to leverage AI as a strategic thought partner, and to inspire your teams to think bigger and take intelligent risks, visit lesliegrandy.com today. The leader who pretends to have the answer does everyone a disservice. But that pattern runs deeper than individual conversations. It's baked into how most of us were trained in school, in our early careers, in the cultures we inherited. Chuck Garcia works with senior leaders every day who are still fighting that conditioning. And he has a very direct way of describing what it costs them.
Fortunately, what a lot of leaders do, if they're accountable for something, but they don't know the answer to something that should be in their purview, many of them talk for about 2 minutes and say absolutely nothing. They feel that they need to respond, so they're just blabbing away. It's just balderdash and just corporate speak. The leaders that I work with sometimes have a very difficult time admitting they don't know something. And that goes back to the legacy of their education. We were rewarded for getting something right and punished for getting something wrong. So here's the crazy thing. It starts with the admission that I don't know the answer to your question. It should come out just as quickly as that and be comfortable in the discomfort that you don't know something. But here's where the stoicism comes in. The minute you think that you're supposed to know everything, you're screwed. Because all of us are capable of doing anything, but we can't do everything. And this is where the Stoic philosophy says, what I can't control, I don't know it, but here's the good news. I know someone who does. So you're going to have to check with John in accounting. He's going to give you the answer. And if he doesn't get you the answer you need, come back to me. I'll find you who do. Just the admission of not knowing what you don't know is a beautiful thing because it keeps you from causing any further self-inflicted harm. This is where they get into trouble. And sometimes just the simple admission, I don't know, but I'll find out where. Such a simple thing, but some people have a very difficult time. That has been the biggest challenge of my coaching career. Getting someone to admit, oh my God, you mean I can actually admit that I don't know? Of course you can. How can you expect it? But
I totally agree with that. I mean, I felt that myself in the career, that people look to me as the person who should know, and I'm letting them down if I indicate that I don't.
Your framework, your mindset, Leslie, just by saying that I'm letting them down. I'm trying to get them to change that much. I'm not letting you down. I'm pointing you in the right direction. And I'm never going to have all the facts. You're never going to have 100% of what you need to make the decision. You're not expected to know everything. It's your limiting belief that you need to know it that is getting you into trouble.
Here's what I think Chuck and Mark are both pointing at. The leaders who can sit with that discomfort, who can say, I don't know, or I got that wrong, well, they create something rare. They create psychological safety, and psychological safety is what makes it possible for the people around them to take risks, speak honestly, and push back when something isn't working. Which brings me to a question most leaders don't think about enough. What do you do with the person on your team who is always pushing back? Not the toxic one, that's a different conversation, but the one whose questions make everyone just a little bit uncomfortable to have them in the room. Sean Atkins has a strong view on this, and he has a story about a time he almost got it wrong.
You have to figure out this difficult to find balance between, I have to bring people who are good to the culture, and I have to bring people into the culture that's going to make the culture be a little bit uncomfortable so that it continues to innovate. Just because someone might be a little bit prickly isn't necessarily a bad thing. They might throw an elbow, or they might be like, I don't know, they might talk much more directly to the rest of the team. Like, I don't know, that's a terrible idea. Cultures have a tendency to get myopic, myself included. We needed to listen to that thing that was kind of pushing us a place that we were all very uncomfortable with, because now we're here and we're like, I guess we could have done that. I'd rather be with a great team that failed than a mediocre team that succeeded. Struggle with people and getting to the other side with your differences and your pains is a better experience in my right, better learning for me, better growth for me as a leader.
What Sean is describing takes a kind of courage that leadership development programs don't spend nearly enough time on. It's not the courage to make a hard call or deliver a difficult message. It's the courage to say publicly, I was wrong. To celebrate the person who pushed back against you. to hold your own certainty loosely enough that you can actually learn something. That requires a particular kind of self-awareness and a willingness to let go of something a lot of leaders hold on to longer than they should. The idea that their job is to be the one with the answers. Hortense Lugenti calls that the superhero trap. She's an executive coach who has worked with leaders at the highest levels, and she's watched this pattern play out over and over. The leader who is so focused on being indispensable, on having the vision, on projecting strength, that they never create the conditions for the people around them to truly thrive. In a world moving as fast as this one, she thinks that model isn't just ineffective, it's unsustainable.
They need to have all the answers. They need to know everything. They need to be everywhere at the same time. That is not possible. You cannot have all the answers. That's absolutely not possible. And especially today with this world always going so fast with the AI of tomorrow. No. So you need to include people. You need to change your leadership. And that, Leslie, I don't have to say anything. Everybody knows that. So the main job of a leader is already and will be to take care of their people, create the environment to make them grow. And that's it. But that's a lot. And of course, I'm not talking about the vision, about, the creativity, the fast and the speed. It's going to be fast, very, very fast. So because of that, take care of that. And of course, take care of AI, but, everybody's doing that anyway. So try to find the balance between both of them and try to reinvent yourself. The main question is, how do you want to be remembered as a leader? How you want to show up?
So how do you want to be remembered as a leader? Hortense asks that question like it's simple, although I know it's not. I think it's the right place to end, however, because everything these 6 leaders described points back to it. The way you think about human capital, the way you reinforce change, the people you center on, the vulnerability you're willing to show, the trap you're able to name. None of that happens by accident. It's a choice you can make or ignore every single day. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this special episode. Thank you for listening to What If with Leslie Grandy. If you're interested in learning more about creative leadership, or you're just looking for a way to build your creative self-confidence and agency, check out my book, Creative Velocity, at lesliegrandy.com/book and start turning your ideas into action.